That's the chat.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We're here. Welcome back to another live stream episode of Follow the Child. Today's Sunday, October 28, 2018. And thank you for joining us. We have with us, we didn't introduce ourselves last time. We have with us Lekshan, Layla, and I'm Michelle. So let's talk a little bit about last month. Oh my God, it's been so long. So last month we talked a little bit about emotional intelligence, the difference between EQ versus IQ, and also the 5 components developed by Daniel Goleman, which were 5 points: self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, motivation, and empathy. And if you want more information about that, just go ahead and click our episode from last month, and then you can find out more information about it, like why it's important and how to foster it within our children or children that you know. Okay, so let's get into it. So today we're talking about self-discipline.
Meaty subject.
Yes. There's a lot to it. Go ahead.
I just want to give a disclaimer here. This is going to be very Montessori. It's going to be a very Montessori-based discussion,
right?
And I mean, as we've introduced ourselves formally, for those of you who might not know, we are Montessorians. Michelle by association, by just learning.
By theory, for sure.
And believing in the philosophy.
Yeah, I believe in the philosophy.
And Layla and myself by actually going through the means of training and the grueling process of self-transformation and becoming what we refer to as Montessori guides in the classroom. Right. So a lot of this topic is going to be rooted in Montessori principles. Right. So I just want to kind of put that out there.
Can I put up another disclaimer?
Sure, of course.
And I was thinking about this a lot as we were preparing the subject, is that disclaimer, we're going to be talking about self-discipline and how to develop it in children. But our children are not perfect. We are not perfect parents. Our children are still kind of like, out there. Yeah. And we are always like ongoing developing discipline in our children. So we don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. Like, oh, they're talking about self-discipline, so their children must be like so on point. No, that's not it at all. So that's our disclaimer.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's get right into it, and I want to kind of define what self-discipline is. And in short, it's just choosing how you want to act, rather than reaching out from your emotions. So how do you making the right choices? How do you want to move forward in your decision making without just initially reacting? You're angry, so now the whole world's got to know you're angry. No, you got to learn how to self-discipline. It's holding back on that emotion, and then finding out what's the right move for you, for your child. And I say emotion because we're specifically talking about children. And that's their norm. Their world is emotional, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that they know, unless they know how to verbalize exactly how they're feeling, they're just going to react. They're going to put a tantrum. So why is it important for a child? Well, kids who learn self-discipline will be better equipped to deal with life's challenges, which I agree with. It'll help to manage their stress, and then help them to make healthy choices when you're not around. Right. So I wanna any suggestions? Nothing there. We're good.
And just like discipline in general, it's a learning process. It's not punitive. We're not punishing children to discipline them. We're teaching them. And
that's key. Layla actually wrote an essay recently on self-discipline as it applies, based on Montessori philosophy and stuff. And I like a part that you wrote. When we think of discipline, if you just say discipline, right, and in front of parents or even educators or anyone who works with children, right away you're thinking of something that the adult does, right, and it's something that the adult does to, I don't want to say train, but kind of correct a child or mold them a certain way.
Right. Absolutely.
But there's something that comes before that has a part to play. But what we're focusing on is the real, the most important part of it, which is the self-discipline, the inner discipline, which comes before. A child has to develop that before they're even going to really take to anything that an adult tries to teach them or tell them. Right. So I really love that you wrote that out and made that point. And even for me, I was like, wow, even being like a Montessori teacher and knowing this, when I hear the word discipline, I'm instantly thinking of that adult to child relationship versus that relationship the child has with him or herself.
Not to make light of the subject, but just honestly being like a child of the 80s, basically. You hear self-discipline, you think you're going to get hit. You're going to get beat, honestly. And you're like, okay. And now my mom just gives me a look. To this day, I am fearful of her. And it's because of all that. But, I mean, I am disciplined, but there's different ways to do that. You don't have to go that route. I'm just saying that to make light of the situation. Okay, so we found a quote. Actually, Layla found a quote by Dr. Maria Montessori that really moved me, and what was I saying? Like it gave you an imagery onto what we're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and read that. Quote starts, it's important to start early so that when the really hard choices come along, oh wait, this is not her quote, is it? No, sorry. Let me go here. I'm sorry, I'm going into your part. How can we expect them to do their work carefully and patiently if care and patience are among their missing gifts? It's like saying, walk nicely to a person without legs. Mm-hmm. Qualities like this can only be given by practice, never by commands. And this is really, really strong. So
that's so powerful, because she says that about a century ago. Right. You have to understand that this is someone who lived in the past a long time before we, even got to where we are today, and before scientists confirmed a lot of the stuff that she said. So that point about that she says that these things can only be given by practice, that's what we have to do. Self-discipline is a practice. You're actually working a mental muscle, or scientifically you would say you're use their neural pathways that you're developing.
You're conditioning your brain, basically.
Yeah, so it's exactly like she said, it's a practice. And you basically have to think of it as that you're building a stronger brain that's capable of harder work and making tougher choices and decisions and choosing the better, making the better choice. So she said that she referred to this as a practice, as an exercise, a physical exercise.
Absolutely.
So long before psychologists in recent day made that connection.
And I'm still amazed, because really when I haven't even scratched the surface to the extent of the knowledge that she has, I want to say, but the little that I do learn, I feel like that in every step of the way, that she was way light years ahead of her time.
For real. Absolutely, she was. Absolutely. That's the thing, that makes me a little sad. When she was writing, it was over a century ago, and she was writing these things about how people then they treated children and how it was backwards and whatnot. But a lot of the practices are still being done today.
Yeah. That's why the research is coming up again.
Exactly.
To confirm what she already said, because it's needing. There's a need for it to be researched. Absolutely. These problems are still prevalent.
Yes. Wow, that's crazy. Right. So just overall, self-discipline promotes good judgment. It exercises good judgment and the opportunity to empower children to make good choices. So basically, that's just the overall theme. And let's get into a little bit. So Layla, how can you establish self-discipline in a child?
Right. So being that, we're in early education, most of my experience with other children have been with children 6 years and younger, but I do have children of my own who are older. So I do try to apply or kind of tweak what I know from Montessori training to fit into that mold. Children, they're not born disciplined. However, they do have a natural inclination towards order. They like to have order. And what I mean by order is they like a little bit of predictability in their life, routine. It gives them that sense of safety, and that they interact with every day, the activities that they're going through, meal times, they'll be a lot less, tricky when they kind of know what to expect. So when we say, children, when they want when they need to be self-disciplined, what we mean is we're trying to give them as much order as possible by giving them the tools to manage their own lives, basically, and giving them the freedom and to manage it. So basically, like
questions.
There's yeah, we'll get to your
question.
In
we see you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, based on what I wrote, I'm gonna just go through the points real quick. And again, I had to write it based on like a teacher standpoint, but a lot of it can be applied to when we're stuck, like we don't know what to do when it comes to a certain behavior that our child is exhibiting. We don't hear that, oh, maybe you should sit and just like observe your child. Look for patterns.
Yeah.
Try to what is triggering that behavior. Okay, so that's why every day at dinner time they do this, or that's why every time when we try to read a book they do that. Like there is always going to be a reason why the children do something. Children are not they don't want to they don't want to be difficult.
There's always an underlying reason, a need that is not being met.
Exactly. And most of the time it's our fault, the adults. Tantrums are usually the result of a developmental need that has been withheld or not provided for them. And if we see it that way, it makes such a huge difference, because we're seeing our child tantruming and we're thinking, oh my God, I have such a spoiled brat. No, it's like your child is tantruming. I've thought the same thing. Your child is tantruming because they have a need that you're withholding or you haven't provided for them. And most of the time, like I said, it's from the adult. Sometimes it's circumstantial, sometimes it's from the environment, but most of the time it's from us.
Okay.
Because we're the ones who prepare the environment.
Right. Exactly.
So even if it's technically something from the environment, it's a result of our ill preparation of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And if you ever like watched a toddler, this happened so much to my children when they were younger. Like they would want to do something on their own, and I know that if they did it on their own, they were either going to make a huge mess, or like potentially like break something or whatever, or hurt themselves. And I would say, no, I'll do it for you. And then the kid would just start rolling on the ground, crying, screaming. And that was my fault, because if I had set up that activity for them to be able to do it independently, that tantrum wouldn't have happened. Like my children, they love to pour water for themselves, and we have a huge like Brita filter, and it's like how are they supposed to pour it on their own? Practical. But if I had like set up something in the kitchen for them to be able to give themselves water on their own, then
you kind of answered something that I was gonna bring up. Like, okay, so pause. Like, okay, so let's say that's happening. What do you do? Oftentimes, like a child is you're in the kitchen, let's say, like you were saying, and what you think is a tantrum, which it is, but it's them, like their needs are not being met.
That's what it is.
How do you react in that moment? Like, okay, like it's go time, it's happening. Are you gonna be like, let me just do it, and they make a mess and clean it, and you yell at them because you don't have time for that? Or like, what do you do in that situation? You kind of answered it like, wait a minute.
It's like you have to pause. And that goes back to like our subject last month, and regulating our emotions. Like the children, they don't know, they don't have the tools to regulate their own emotions yet. So at least like we adults, we have to. The next thing after
that's observation.
That was observation. Let's observe first before we judge our children. And the next thing was that in order to attain discipline, we should give them purposeful work that they enjoy instead of just setting up rules. So like in the Montessori classroom,
we believe they achieve discipline through work.
Exactly. So work comes before rules in the Montessori classroom, and this should happen at home too. So when you give them purposeful work, they don't have time to misbehave. And I'm not saying that you have to fill in every single moment of your child's time with activities.
Yeah, this is different than the disease of keeping children busy.
No,
busy.
It's not busy. We're not trying to keep them busy. You're giving them purposeful work that they find
they feel like they're important. It makes them feel important.
Exactly. Yeah.
A sense of purpose.
Yes.
I belong here. I'm doing something that has meaning.
Yes. Right.
And
exactly.
I'm an important part of this family or classroom or community.
Right.
I need to be here, so I need to do these things.
Right. And this again comes back to independence.
Absolutely.
Providing independence for your children so that they can find that purposeful work without having to ask you, Mom, can you please bring down something from the cabinet that they can't reach so that they can help with some household chore. It's like, just providing them with the independence to find that purposeful work, and then rules come afterwards. You will find that once you've set up a space for them to be able to work, the children, they will follow the rules because they don't want to lose that sense of purpose. They're like, okay, I'll follow the rules. If this means I get to keep my work and I get to do what I need to do to feel, fulfilled, then I'll follow the rules, no problem. So that's what it is.
I found this honestly to be really interesting because I hadn't, one of those people, I didn't think about work to solve an issue. I didn't think about that. I thought about a rule to solve the issue. I didn't say,
yes,
okay, well, let me help them become independent so that I can do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely.
So I didn't think about that. And if I thought about that, I'm sure there's people out there that thought the same. So I just want to say, like, when's a good time to do that? And the first thing I was asking myself as you were talking, and the first thing I thought of, honestly, was just like, well, if you know that your child or a child that you're around is, let's say, all over you when you're cooking, and that's the time you're like, well, once I start cooking, I know that that's when they're going to sneak in, or when you're on the phone, that's when they're going to come. That's the time to like prep something. So I was thinking, so if they're cooking, is this what you're saying?
Yes.
Like, I don't want to miss.
No, you're on the right track.
So, great. So if you're cooking and you're going to be chopping stuff, give them something that they can break up themselves, where they feel like they're achieving that, but
Absolutely.
It's safer and it's their own, and
yes,
and they can pull out themselves.
Exactly.
Right. So
yes.
it's just like, hey, I'm gonna do this. Why don't you start working on the carrots? And it's baby carrots, taking
like
them out of the bag, or
okay.
Yeah. So then just to put an example.
Right. And then the next point is to prevent behavior that is, unruly or unsavory by showing them what could be done before the behavior. Like, you have to have a little bit of foresight as a parent or as a teacher for things that you know might happen. And like, most of the time parents, they know, like, if they put out something, let's say it's a plant, they put it out, it's a new plant, and you have a toddler, their instinct is to go to the plant and start, like, maybe tugging on leaves or like playing the dirt. Yeah. So you already know that might happen, but you really want this plant to be somewhere where, the child might be able to reach it. So you beforehand, you bring the child, you demonstrate to them how we treat the plant. And that gives the child the tools to be able to say, okay, this is how we treat the plant. Before, they didn't know. They don't know what they don't know. So just prevention by foresight, by just trying to think ahead of the child and what they might do.
And just explaining that to them.
Yeah, because you know what? Confrontation, like,
when it's been done
when
already,
it's been done, it's
really
it's kind of
detrimental.
It's counterproductive, and the child feels personally hurt. And
we would too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like, you're not good enough, you let that person down.
Right. That's what happens to us even in work. Like, if someone had told us what to do from the beginning, most of the time we wouldn't have done, like, whatever gotten us into trouble.
Yeah.
Another thing that helps children become disciplined is giving them choice. And this is something that I've seen a lot of, like, parenting articles come up with in recent days.
Freedom within limits.
Right. Yeah. Freedom within limits,
which is the Montessori catchphrase.
Exactly.
Which is now being widely used.
Right.
Everywhere.
So just giving the children choices. 2 is enough. Just 2 choices.
2, no more than 2.
Right. 2 choices that you find acceptable. Let's say, you need the child to get to bed, and you say, go to bed now. It's that kind of command. It might be, they might rebel against it. But you give them a choice. Oh, do you want to go brush your teeth first, or would you like to put your pajamas on first? Like that gives them a choice, both of which you're fine, whichever one they do first. But the point is that you're giving them control of their own life, and they really value that as little people.
And you're teaching them how to make choices.
Good choices, right? Exactly.
That need to be made.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
in order
the
to get
choices.
something done.
Absolutely.
That's the goal.
Right. Absolutely. And then the next thing is consistency. We want to stay consistent to our word. And if, like, when we were talking before about like setting up work and having rules around the work, you want to be consistent so that the child knows like
what to expect.
That sense of order. We're coming back to
and
the
that's
sense
what
of
I was
order.
going to say, the sense of order and routine. Yes.
Right. The sense of order. They feel safe when they know what to expect. And this is so, so, so important for children 6 and under, because their whole world, they only know the world that they come into contact directly. And so, just even knowing when they do something wrong, what the adult's reaction is going to be, it puts them at ease. Like, oh, I know if I do this, this is what's going to happen. This is what my mom is going to say. This is what my teacher's going to say. It really does put them at ease. It's not like, oh my goodness, there's going to be an explosive
like this came out of
reaction.
nowhere. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
it really does put them at ease, And I think there was just one more point. Oh, one of the most important points was go into that, or should I?
I think we'll touch on it because we have a question from one of our viewers.
Oh yeah.
So just to kind of answer, they wrote, do you guys think fear is necessary when it comes to discipline? So we're gonna let you decide for yourself what you think about that based on what we have here, a quote from Maria Montessori in her book, The Discovery of the Child. No one who has ever done anything really great or successful has ever done it simply because he was attracted by what we call a reward or by the fear of what we call a punishment. So you might yield some short-term results in scaring a child into behaving a certain way.
Absolutely.
But nothing we do is for the short term.
Absolutely.
And we have to think about the long term. And we have to understand how this is going to affect my child, not today as a 6-year-old or not tomorrow as a 12-year-old, but when, he's 35 years old and is maybe married and maybe a father and maybe has some kind of position in whatever job or whatever place of work and needs to make decisions and do certain things. And so how is my fear-based parenting today going to affect that 35-year-old man? So fear, does it work at all? You know what? It does, but it'll only work for that moment. And in the long run, you're actually causing harm.
Okay, so let me hit you with an example. So your child doesn't want to do homework. What do? Well, if you don't finish it, you're not gonna get tablet time, or do you do that? What's a way to like?
Well, what you're referring to in that example is a natural consequence. Okay. First homework, then screen time. The children will understand we don't do our homework. We don't get to take advantage of our privileged daily allotted screen time.
Taking away privileges is different than punishment.
Is different than punishment.
Okay, so then would you say it's in the same line as a reward or not? How do you differentiate that?
Oh no.
If it's
reward,
are we rewarding homework with screen time?
If it's part of their routine, I would say no.
Yeah.
If it's part of their daily
if it's something
routine,
extra that you're introducing.
Right.
Oh wow, you finished your homework today really fast. Here, I'm gonna
a treat.
That's a reward.
You can
that's
have
something
extra dessert after dinner. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So there's these subtle variations, and it's very easy. I like that you brought that up because it's very easy to kind of
sync them together.
And kind of they overlap and kind of get confused by that.
Right. And then also the thing about fear-based parenting is that you're bringing up your child to only to only center themselves in situation, so that they have no care for the people around them. They're only focused on the punishment, like, to them.
Yeah, the
So
negative
they're only,
outcome for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. They're only focusing
Mhm.
on what's going to happen to them when they do a certain thing. As soon as supervision is gone, they're going to be doing whatever they want.
Exactly.
Let it be known.
A main like part of self-discipline is conditioning children to worry about the greater good,
Right.
to be concerned about how does this affect my, like, people around me,
Right.
and everything, not so much as, oh, well, I'm gonna get beat if I don't clean the pickup after myself,
Right.
so let me do this quick. So it sends the wrong message when you do fear. And research proves that when you set limits and help children foster self-discipline with empathy, they're more responsive.
Right.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
before I get into that, you want to wrap up something, or
Which one?
Do you have another point?
do you have anything to add before I go?
Oh,
into...
there was just one more.
Yeah.
The about obedience, because we're talking about self-discipline, and then did you want to say it before that?
No, it's okay.
Okay, because we need to wrap up. Yes.
Yeah.
So when we talk about discipline, a lot of the times, like we were saying before, it's like you command, and then you expect a response from the child. So once it develops their own self-discipline, and they're given the chance to do purposeful work, they're being provided independence, they're being provided freedom to do what they find enjoyable and purposeful, they begin to realize that the adults around them, they want what's good for them, and they only tell them what to do, what would benefit them in the long run, and so they become happy to obey, which is something that Dr. Montessori she wrote about. And when I first read about that, I was like, boom, like,
and it's so natural.
blown.
It's a natural thing.
Yes.
Oh, wait, like even in the classroom, first you establish trust.
Yeah.
Get the child to trust you, and they'll do it. They'll do anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's impossible to teach a child who doesn't trust you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I was just like, happy to obey. How can children be happy to
Absolutely,
obey?
because they want to feel that closeness and that connection
Yes.
to the adults in their
But
lives,
it's
especially their
exactly
moms or
right.
dads.
And this is different than like the children doing something for the adult because they want the adult to be pleased, or like trying to please adults. It's something totally different. They love to obey because they know that you love them. That's something deep.
Yeah.
Like for me, even like as a religious person, I'm like, oh my God. That's just wow. That really blew me away. Yeah.
It is.
So let's say your child is older than 6, because we're specializing in early childhood. What do we do? Our children, they're growing, and some of them are in elementary already. So is it too late?
On the contrary,
Or in high school,
I think
or
it's a really good time,
Okay.
because there's with increased age, there's increased responsibility
Mhm.
and increased opportunities, I would say, to regulate self-discipline. I feel like in the early childhood phase, self-discipline might include things more such as, controlling your impulses, like training yourself not to hit your sibling when they make you mad, right?
Right.
And as you get older, it's more about like, okay, I have this responsibility, I have this chore I need to do. Am I going to put the video game down to finish my chores, or is it so important for me to like just finish these few games first, or I have daily assigned homework, and now am I just gonna put it aside, or am I gonna manage my time and understand that this is something that needs to get done, so let me just do it first, and then I'm gonna have the free time later.
And I would say because children older than 6, they now have more logic and reason.
Exactly.
So,
and
it's
they
easier to reach them.
it's easy to reach them and they know the reaction already at that point. They're not afraid or not knowing where this explosive reaction is coming from. They already know, well, I wanted to get gaming on all through the night until I went to bed. I knew something was due and I'm like, oh my God, now my teacher's going to like let me have it.
Exactly.
She's gonna
talk to me. The consequence.
So that they know.
And they're not like as shocked or as like,
And another thing I want to add is like, children older than that have this level of understanding, they have to make those mistakes and they have to feel that consequence. And they're going to do that more often than not. And true. I am actually, I've always been like, when I was in the classroom, I always told my students, number one, just absolutely 100% tell me the truth, because if I find out you lied to me, the consequences are greater. But within yourself, it's good to be open and honest. That's one thing I used to tell them. And then the second thing was that we had set rules, and I know that you're going to mess up, and I'm not mad at you because you messed up, but just take that as a lesson and try to prevent why the mistake had to go as far as it did.
Right.
And so those are two, like, I feel main things. Expect them to mess up. It's like, oh, this is your time to mess up. Like going back to that one person who's 35, possibly a father, all these things, like you want him, he's going to mess up, but you don't want him to mess up over like the most basic things, like constantly. He should have had that out of his system already, hopefully.
So the number, what can you do? I'm going to go back to what I said even in last month's recording, model self-discipline. If you know what you're guilty of as an adult, as a parent, and you know that your children are watching you, and they're seeing all those Amazon Prime orders roll in daily. And that they're picking up on your online shopping problem. No, I'm serious.
But this is good. This is real stuff.
This is, to be fair, if it's Amazon Prime, it's most likely for the classroom. Classroom. So you have to kind of self-reflect and be like, what are the areas that I struggle with? Am I eating too much? Are my children seeing me go for my third and fourth serving? Which is never healthy.
Absolutely.
Or am I spending too much? Is it always like, oh, what are we gonna do today? Oh, let's go to the mall. Keep yourself in check. And even if you have those areas, or even like do you lose your temper quickly? That's a major part of self-discipline.
Right.
So even if you have these areas that you struggle with, we're adults, and believe it or not, it's harder for us to fix ourselves than it is for kids. Yeah. So at least try. I know this kind of a little weird, but at least try to be a little sneaky about it and try not to. You know what I mean?
Thank you for keeping it real.
Real. Like you don't need to be like. They don't need to see like every.
They're observing and taking it in.
Every little thing that you're overindulging in. They don't need to be witness to that. Like let your children like not be witness to that. Keep things simple. A snack drawer.
Let that snack drawer be in your room, girl. Not in the kitchen where they can see.
Laughs and everything.
Work on yourself. But please, right now we're talking about working on the children, and you kind of have to put up a front. You have to do that with a lot of things. It's not just this. You do have to put up a front, So just model self-discipline, work on yourself, and show your children that you can restrict and like any urges that you might have, because they're not necessarily the best choices to be made.
Absolutely.
Explain when you set rules. Explain the reasoning behind them. Anytime, I always get so bothered anytime I hear a child explain his reasoning or her reasoning for something by saying, oh, because my mom said I have to do it.
The teacher said it.
The teacher said I have to.
Right.
Or dad said I have to. And I'm like,
or their classmate told them that they have to.
I'm like, no. I mean, there's no such thing. Like, okay, sure, mom and dad or teacher said to do or not do something, but give them the reason so that the next time someone asks them, hey, why are you doing that? They can say, well, you know what? Because if I don't, this is going to happen, and I want to avoid that. Let them have those discussions. It's important.
Yes.
So set the rules with, the freedom with the limits that we talked about. Provide structure, routine, schedule, so they know what to expect. How can you expect them to be disciplined in doing things when there's no discipline in their when the like we talked about the prepared environment? The environment isn't prepared to cater to the discipline. Yeah. They have to there has to be something that they have to be disciplined about doing their homework, about doing their chores, about what are extracurriculars they might have, about helping out at home, or, you know, going to bed on time, knowing that 30 minutes of screen time on a school night means 30 minutes and doesn't mean 45. It doesn't mean 35. It means 30.
Right.
So have a routine in place that works for your family and works for your children.
Right.
And set the limits and do it with empathy. Okay, that's the most important part. And this goes back to the question from one of our audience members asking about discipline and fear. Think of it more as discipline and empathy. Children are less likely to fight against a limit or a rule when you show them that you're compassionate and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
She may not like your limit, but if she feels that you're understanding,
yes,
she knows that you're on her side.
Absolutely.
She's going to choose to stop fighting it, because believe me, what she really wants more than anything is that connection and closeness to you.
Right.
And just to achieve that, and because you're showing her, like, I'm here, I care about you, I want to be close to you,
right.
you know, that parent-child relationship or that teacher-child relationship is so important. So, like, don't undermine that, and, you know, give it empathy. Empathy plays a huge role.
It goes a
everything.
long way. I'm so happy that you said that, because that works with like all age groups. And then in my, just what I was thinking, it works specifically with teens, because then we go back into a state where it's emotion, and then you feel like, oh, here's my toddler again, everything's acting out, everything's emotion. So kind of like let them go through that feeling, and then where they're in a state where they can listen, have these conversations with them, and then show them, yeah, I am on your side. I would do this for anyone, you know, just show them the right and the wrong and what they're doing, and help them to make the right choice. And that's such a great age. I know it's one of the hardest ages, because you have to get to know your child all over again, but that's the best time too, where you can have these great conversations with them.
Absolutely.
So it's so sweet. And then I like to pull out the humor in kids, especially in teens, especially if they feel like they don't have it. They have it. They had it in there. So then they get a sense of humor. They can engage. They could be social, and it goes back to our last episode, which is like having EQ.
Right.
So,
and then, like, just to both of your points, being empathetic with your children doesn't mean being overly lenient.
No.
So actually, children, they tend to feel what is the word? Oh my God! It just left my brain.
Describe.
I got it. They tend to feel neglected when you're overly lenient, because someone who has been consistent and who has, you know, set the tone, and
it shows that you care enough.
Exactly.
That they're paying attention to me.
That parent cares. That teacher cares. You know, you can be fun. You could be absolutely but being overly lenient, letting them do whatever they want. When we say freedom within limits, not do whatever they want, because they do want that sense of structure. They need it.
And honestly, just to add to that, when they, going back to being a teen, once they understand that within themselves, and then they understand, you know, the right and wrong choice. I knew that was going to come because mine went off, but I have it on vibrate. Okay. Once they see that choice, you know, when they're with their friends, they get them to get on that same page of making that right choice. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. So that's it. We're gonna.
Can I just say one more line from my essay?
She literally has her 17-page essay that she did for her Montessori training printed out in front of us, because it's all relevant.
Just one line.
Which one? Because there's so much.
I'm gonna quote myself.
That's always great.
And with Maria.
All right. When we think of discipline, it is usually sought for the purpose of making the adult's life easier and to have more control over children. If we begin to view discipline as a means of granting our children true happiness and peace, and then Maria Montessori says, this is the period in which discipline establishes itself, a form of active peace, of obedience and love, in which work perfects itself and multiplies, just as in springtime, the flowers take on color, leading to the production of sweet and refreshing fruits.
That's so poetic. Maria. That's so beautiful.
Isn't she?
Yeah.
All right. That's a wrap, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll have another live event next month.
Oh, okay. So that's all. We don't have any more questions, comments. Okay. Yeah. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us. I just want to say really quickly, just to be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, using this handle at followthechildnj. Or you can email us at followthechildnj@gmail.com.
And just please give us feedback, because this is all for you guys. And you do have a say on what we talk about each month.
And if you know anyone who missed our live event, we'll be sure to share the link to this video. So it'll be up there.
And subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.
Yeah.
And bye. We'll see you next month.
See ya. Bye.